How much money do you think the average person actually retires with? If you ask around, you might hear people throw out numbers like $1 million or even more, because that is what we are told we need to be safe. But the real data from the Federal Reserve tells a much darker and more honest story. The truth is that the typical American household approaching age 62 has only about $200,000 tucked away in their retirement accounts. Now, on paper, $200,000 might sound like a significant sum of money, but when you realize that this money has to survive inflation, rising healthcare costs, and potentially 3 decades of life, that number starts to look very thin. It is a terrifying thought to realize that after 40 years of hard work, you might be just one major medical bill away from total financial disaster. But what if I told you that there is a hidden window of time that most people completely ignore? A window that exists between the ages of 62 and 70. In this next part of our journey together, I am going to show you how a few specific choices in this 8-year period can effectively double your retirement security. This is not about some high-risk gamble or a get-rich-quick scheme. This is about the cold, hard math of patience and how you can reclaim your independence so you never have to worry about becoming a burden to your children. For many of us, the urge to retire at 62 is incredibly strong. You have spent decades in the grind, dealing with long commutes, corporate stress, and the physical toll of a full-time career. You feel like you have earned your freedom, and the government tells you that 62 is the very first moment you can claim your Social Security benefits. But here is the truth that the system does not always explain clearly. Taking your benefits at 62 is often the most expensive financial mistake you will ever make. When you claim early, you are not just getting your money sooner, you are accepting a permanent pay cut for the rest of your life. In fact, your monthly check at 62 could be as much as 30% lower than if you simply waited until your full retirement age. And it gets even more dramatic if you can hold out until age 70. While you are losing that Social Security income, you are also stopping the greatest engine of wealth ever created. Your retirement accounts are like a snowball rolling down a hill. The first few decades are slow and grueling because the snowball is small and you are doing all the heavy lifting with your monthly contributions. But by the time you reach your 60s, that snowball is large, and every inch it rolls adds more mass than it did in the first 10 years combined. If you stop at 62 and start withdrawing money, you are essentially smashing that snowball right when it was about to become an avalanche. Think about the math for a moment. The historical average return of the S&P 500 is around 10% per year. If you have $200,000 and you leave it alone, that money can grow significantly without you adding a single extra cent. Thanks to the power of compounding, your money is working harder than you ever did at your 9-to-5 job. But the real secret lies in how the government rewards your patience. For every single year you delay your Social Security benefits past your full retirement age, your benefit increases by roughly 8%. Where else in the world can you find a guaranteed, government-backed return of 8% per year? You cannot find that in a savings account, a bond, or even most real estate deals. By waiting from age 62 to age 70, you are essentially giving yourself a massive raise that lasts as long as you live. Imagine the peace of mind knowing that your basic needs are covered by a check that is 75% larger than what you would have received if you had panicked and claimed early. That is the difference between surviving on generic groceries and actually enjoying your golden years with dignity. I understand that for many of you, waiting until 70 feels impossible. You might be tired, or you might be worried about your health. But this is where we have to shift our strategy from working hard to working smart. You do not necessarily have to stay in that high-stress job that is wearing you down. Many successful retirees use what we call a financial bridge strategy. This might mean taking a lower-stress part-time job for a few years just to cover your basic bills while your main investments stay untouched. Or it might mean looking at your home equity, which is often a massive amount of wealth that is just sitting there doing nothing. For many Americans, their house is their largest asset. But you cannot use a kitchen cabinet to pay for your electricity bill. If you are living in a large family home that you no longer need, downsizing could unlock the cash you need to bridge the gap to age 70. This is about moving your wealth from something that is stuck in bricks and mortar to something that produces actual cash flow. It is about taking control of your destiny instead of letting the calendar dictate your future. The goal here is not to die with the most money possible. The goal is to ensure that you never have to look at your children and tell them that you cannot afford your own care. We all want to be the grandfather who can treat the family to dinner without checking the balance on our credit cards. We want to be the men who are remembered for our wisdom and our strength, not for our financial struggles. So, let us look at a simple 3-step action plan you can start thinking about today. First, I want you to perform what I call an independence audit. Sit down and look at your actual spending habits and separate what you need from what you simply want out of habit. Often, we find that we are spending money on things that no longer bring us joy just because that is what we have always done. Second, look at your assets and identify what is liquid and what is not. If most of your wealth is tied up in your home, it might be time to have a serious conversation about what that house is actually doing for your future. And third, build your cash bucket. Before you retire, you should have at least 1 to 2 years of living expenses in a simple, safe, high-yield savings account. This bucket allows you to leave your investments alone even if the stock market has a bad year. It gives you the emotional strength to stay invested when everyone else is panicking. Retirement is not a one-time event. It is a long-term strategy that requires constant adjustment. The voices on the news will tell you that the world is ending and that you should be afraid. But the math tells a different story. The math says that if you are patient, if you are disciplined, and if you understand the power of time, you can be more secure at 70 than you were at 50. You have spent your whole life providing for others and building a legacy. Do not let the final chapters of your story be defined by a lack of planning. You have the power to change your trajectory right now. It does not matter if you feel behind or if you wish you had started 20 years ago. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time is today. I want you to take a moment and think about what your life would look like if you knew with absolute certainty that you were financially independent. How would you sleep at night? How would you treat your spouse? How would you carry yourself when you walk down the street? That version of you is waiting just a few years away if you have the courage to stick to the plan. I want to thank you for spending this time with me today. If you found this perspective helpful, please consider sharing this with a friend who might be feeling the same pressure you are. We are all in this together, and by sharing the truth about the math, we can all find our way to a more secure future. What age are you planning to retire, and what is your biggest concern right now? Please leave a comment below and let us start a conversation. Until next time, stay focused, stay patient, and keep building your independence.